This is American Ground Radio. I'm Stephen Parr with Louis R. Avalone.
There's a war out there. There's a war coming.
What accent is that?
I have no idea.
What accent? What are you
I have
doing?
no idea.
Was that like the ghost of Colonel Sanders or
No
something?
idea, but Jen Psaki.
There's a war and it's finger-licking good.
No, I'm serious.
Oh, okay.
Jen Psaki, she's saying that there's a civil war coming. There's a civil war coming. And,
No, that's not what she's saying.
absolutely.
That's not what she's saying.
Look, these communist Democrats, they are really getting triggered over the states taking it upon themselves. So many states now have passed voter ID laws, basically making it harder for folks to cheat in their elections.
No, actually, there haven't been that many states that did it. There are actually a whole bunch of states that already had voter ID laws.
That's a great point.
And the Democrats are just ignoring any Democrat-run state like, I don't know, Delaware, that's got voter ID laws. It's only the red states where apparently putting in voter ID laws makes you racist, which means maybe it's not about the law itself, but about which party's in control of the state that has the law.
Well, many people for many weeks have been saying that these Democrats are trying to instigate a civil war. And I don't know that I would go that far, but comparing voting rights bills in states to the Civil War, I think is beyond repulsive. I mean, it's basically what you would expect from this White House.
Right. Saying that someone who is free to go down to the DMV and get a photo ID so that they then are free to go and vote is the same thing as someone who spends their life in chains doing service work for someone else. Hard labor for someone else is bought and sold like property. That the same thing, someone who's free to go and vote, is the same thing as someone who's been born and sold into slavery?
Well, she says that these election integrity laws are not integrity laws. They are the worst challenge to our democracy since the Civil War. Now, will you take a listen?
All right.
Well, thank you for the question, because he's very focused on this speech tomorrow, one that he himself wanted to deliver.
Oh, he wanted to deliver it all by himself. He's
like
such
a big
boy
Such
now.
a big boy.
All right, let's play the rest of the clip.
I was saying, Dad, I wanted to do the speech.
Play the
He's
rest
like,
of the
Joe,
clip.
Okay.
He'll lay out the moral case for why denying the right to vote is a form of suppression and a form of silencing, and how he will redouble his commitment to using every tool at his disposal to continue to fight to protect the fundamental right of Americans to vote against the onslaught of voter suppression
Okay,
laws
that's enough. That's
based
enough.
on a
I
dangerous
can't listen to that anymore.
Good. There's a whole bunch more.
Now listen, did you hear what she said about a moral case? Wait, Democrats, the party of secularism, the party of no creator whatsoever,
the party
no
of
God, no religion,
the party of kill your babies in the womb.
now they're wanting to make a moral case.
They're the right people to do it.
But see, here's the thing. What she's saying, and here's what is just so devious, diabolical, actually. What she's saying is correct.
What?
That she's denying someone the right to vote is
I see what you're saying.
a form of suppression.
You're right, that
It
is.
is a form of silencing.
Denying someone their right to vote without due process. Because if you commit a crime in most states, you go to jail, you are denied your right to vote. That's not wrong. You were the one who broke the laws of the society. Why should you tell other people how the society should be run?
But it's more sinister than that. Hear what she's saying. She says that denying the right to vote is a form of suppression. And she's absolutely right. This is all a red herring. Because no one here, no one in any of these red states, no one in any of these states that already have had for decades photo ID requirements or other restrictions to reduce the likelihood of cheating, of fraud in their elections, none of those states are denying anyone the right to vote.
No, and see, that's a straw man argument. Basically, you set up a straw man. You put somebody there, and you say, this is what they're doing, and nobody's actually making that argument. And then you beat that little scarecrow up with the stick and act like you've actually done something. You haven't. You're arguing against something that no one is arguing for.
Look, the majority of states in this country have passed laws in recent years requiring voters to display photo ID. In 2012, let's go back to the election of 2012. Black voters turned out in higher percentages of registered voters in those states where photo IDs were required they turned out in higher percentages than any other ethnic minorities. In fact, they appeared to have voted in greater percentages than white voters as well. This was in 2012, and this is in states that required photo ID.
Yeah. And that's the whole point here. This isn't voter suppression. This isn't Jim Crow. They are lying to you, just flat out lying to you.
Look, Hillary Clinton made this same case. President Obama made the same case. Now you've got Kamala Harris and President Biden making the same case, that basically all of these voting integrity laws are a setback for minority voters. And we've got to wonder, are Democrats actually interested in the facts, or are they just interested in their own power?
They're interested in their own power, and they're not making a case, they're lying. There's a difference. When you argue with facts, you're making a case. When you make stuff up, you're flat out lying. And when you say these voter integrity laws are voter suppression laws, in the exact opposite of what the facts and the data shows, you are a liar. You are a pants-on-fire liar.
But when you're making this argument, basically what you're saying is voter ID laws disenfranchise the poor, because a lot of people who are poor, have never obtained a photo ID.
That's not true.
That's what those on the left.
But see, that's not true.
The argument that they're making.
No, that's the lie they're making.
But see, I don't know of any predestination for people who are poor or of color to also belong to families lacking the organizational skills of keeping up with important papers, such as birth certificates or even a driver's license, for goodness sake.
What's the percentage of people who are poor who don't have IDs?
No, they're just excuses.
That's exactly right.
Because the facts don't bear out any connection between voter ID laws and disenfranchisement of minority voters. We can debate the extent of voter fraud until the cows come home.
But you know what there is a correlation of? Allowing extra vote by mail without name, photo IDs, and identification, and an increase in election fraud.
Don't even get me started about that, because, Democrats, they're claiming to champion voting rights for the minorities in this country.
For the dead, for the non-existent.
But yet, NPR last year found that nearly 500,000 mail-in ballots were rejected in the 2020 primary elections, and their analysis, this is NPR, obviously no bastion of conservative thought there.
Right.
NPR said it was primarily voters of color and young voters who were more likely than others to have their ballots not counted. Now, that's from mail-in ballots, but yet the Democrats are championing minority voters?
Because it's easier for them to cheat.
And did you see Kamala Harris saying that people who live in rural communities have a hard time with voter ID because they can't access Xerox machines? Is she out of her mind?
You're not supposed to be Xeroxing your ID. Dear Lord. Okay, let's get to the top 3 things you need to know for tomorrow. Tens of thousands of people took to the streets in Cuba over the weekend to protest the communist dictatorship in the island nations. This is the largest mass protest in Cuba since 1994, if not ever. The government quickly shut off the internet and wireless communications, but many videos and photos of the mass demonstrations still made it out to the web. Cuba is currently suffering one of its worst economic downturns in the island's history due to COVID travel restrictions, U.S. sanctions, and the general economic destruction that communism usually causes.
I know you're going to say this is a bridge too far to cross. Just substitute the name of the United States of America in for Cuba in that story that you were just talking about, because guess what? Our government is shutting down free speech in this country as well. You were talking about how Cuba shut down the protesters. They're doing the same here.
No, our government's encouraging the protesters to loot and things, and they just call it peaceful protest. Second thing you need to know before tomorrow, 2 bills that would cut out shady election practices in the state of Texas advanced to the state House and Senate over the weekend and straight party line votes. The bills would outlaw 24-hour voting and drive-through voting, 2 practices put in place during last year's presidential elections, mostly in Harris County, the largest county in Texas. Neither of those practices had been considered legal or even even attempted before last year. Now, Democrats who walked out of the Capitol in the last minutes of the regular session earlier this month to prevent a vote from taking place are thinking about fleeing the state altogether. There's talk that Democrats who were elected to represent Texans will simply flee to Washington, D.C. to prevent any further work from getting done this special session.
See, folks just don't want to make a case. They don't want to make a case. They don't want to defend a position. They just want to obstruct.
They want to not do their job. This is dereliction of duty for the entire Democrat Party in the state of Texas. And the third thing you need to know before tomorrow, Jake Bequette is running for Senate in Arkansas. Bequette played football at the University of Arkansas before playing for the New England Patriots for 4 years. He then quit football to enlist in the military, serving the 101st Airborne in the U.S. Army. Bequette is running against Republican incumbent John Bozeman, who has already been endorsed by President Trump for re-election.
Wait a minute. He quit playing professional football in order to enlist in the military?
He did. That's pretty good. Served tour duty in Iraq. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Very impressive.
Yeah.